This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers, that is, 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 264, entitled Do FIP, that's financially independent person, women exist? ? Description. This flyer rejects TFM's, that's Turd Flinging Monkey's, claim that autonomous self-actualizing women, whom I call FIPs, financially independent persons, do not exist. I give evidence that they do and emphasize the need that they exist so that the masses can create a FIP society in order to free men from the manslavery by wiping out fluffies, converting them to being FIPs. Flyer itself. Center a bit more. Do FIP, that's financially independent person, women exist? ? By Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer is a response to TFM, Turd Flinging Monkey, a prominent YouTube provider for the MGTOW movement, who claimed in a recent video that he thought that women are not independent, self-actualized creatures. I was shocked by this. Normally, I have quite a high respect level for TFM because he is one of the smartest MGTOW content providers out there, and obviously a high IQ thinker. He thinks things through, giving a thoughtful view on many topics. He is no fool, which is why I listen to him daily, but this time I can't agree with him at all. I doubt I have misinterpreted him, since his statement that he thought women were incapable of being fully autonomous agents, financially independent, and taking responsibility for their own lives, their own financial lives, etc., struck me simply as wrong-headed, even silly. Perhaps TFM has an idée fixe, that's French, in his head on this issue, because the statement that women are not capable of being what I call FIPs, financially independent persons, is an empirical statement that can be checked scientifically by going out into the world and actually observing whether women are FIPs or not. When I was listening to TFM stating his views on female incapability to be autonomous, existentially responsible beings, struck me as obviously false. I say this for the following reasons. Recently, I had a look at the stats on women studying STEM at universities and studying math and the sciences at high school in the US. This is what I came away with, and even made a YouTube video on the topic whose link is... there's a link provided. You'll have to go to the text. You can get the link in the text and the flyer number. The percentage of young women at high schools in the US who study math, physics, chemistry is the same as the percentage of young men doing the same. That was encouraging, I thought, but still only about a quarter of young men study calculus. In fact, I think it was a fifth. At universities, the US, women were studying STEM fields, science, tech, engineering, math, at about 3/4 of the male rate and climbing. So I thought that too was encouraging. From my own experience on 2 counts, that is, observing my own sister and her acquaintances, and from my experience as a computer science professor in the US and China, I certainly did not come away with TFM's assessment, just the opposite in fact. My sister is definitely a FIP and a self-actualizer par excellence. She's a medical doctor and quite an entrepreneur, having her own family medicine and women's clinic that employs some 24 other doctors, most of them women. I have met on my visits to my sister over the years quite a few of these female doctors, and of course, being doctors, they are obviously FIPs, and very successful FIPs with high incomes and good brains. My sister may not have my male scientist intellectual curiosity, but she does have a good brain, pretty much equal to my own, but not in math, where I'm a bit of a whiz, that is 1 in 1,000. She's not an intellectual, but is superior to her 2 brothers in general financial success. My younger brother estimates she is worth several $1 million. This contrasts with the situation of my brother, who did merchant banking and ran a construction company, but bankrupted 3 times. And as for me, I'm rather poor, having had half my savings stolen from me from my previous chink fluffy wife. I remember having a conversation with my sister about a problem she was discussing with her female doctor colleagues at her clinic about the then new palimony law in Australia, which would have allowed a live-in sexual partner to, in quotes, divorce and take half the possessions of the other sexual partner. This palimony law was created by the hated fluffy feminist hypocrites, designed to benefit fluffies at men's expense. But for these female doctors, this new law had a real sting in the tail, because these women were obliged to live down, that is, if they were to get any sex and companionship at all from a man, given that these women were pretty much at the top of the totem pole, there would be very few men of high status to satisfy their female hypergamous instincts, so they were forced to compromise. They had relationships with men of lower SMV, sexual marketplace value. That is, these men earned less than their live-with girlfriends, so these women were seriously thinking of throwing out their boyfriends from their apartments so that the palimony law would not apply in the case of a divorce, that is, a breakup. So these women were obviously FIPs, going through the same kinds of problems that men go through, because the gender laws are so fucked up and abused by the hated fluffy feminist hypocrites who see men only as cash machines to be abused and exploited. So, listening to my sister, I got the impression that here was a class of upper middle class professional women who were obviously FIPs, who were having the same kind of financial existential problems as men, because they had bothered to become career competent, responsible adults. Their very existence makes TFM's statement that such women don't exist seem off the wall. Of course they exist, and are not so rare, because the universities in the Western countries are full of upper middle class women who now dominate the professional courses. For example, medicine, dentistry, vet science, law, etc. These women graduate with real skills that the economy values and pays well for. They are definitely FIPs, so why on earth was TFM sprouting his mouth off in such, as seen by me, obviously misguided way? The other experience I want to relate was when I was a computer science professor in the US and in China, teaching master's level classes in AI, that's artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer theory, etc. A third of the classes were women, or rather a third of the members of the classes were women. And they were ambitious, hard-working, taking their studies as seriously as the men, and expecting fully to be FIPs and taking responsibility for their own lives, being self-actualizing. So, the empirical data and my own personal experience contradicts empirically TFM's opinion, so I'm puzzled why he has the view he does on the non-FIP nature of women. Obviously, I don't agree with him on this score, although I do on many other points of his, which is why I listen to him daily. Now, why am I harping on the fitness of women so much? Because it's a topic close to a masculist's heart. The political core of masculism is to free men from manslavery, from working for women, and the masculists do that by wiping out the fluffies, ignoring them to death, so that their fluffy genes are removed from the gene pool. The whole point of wiping out fluffies is to create a FIP society, in which both sexes, especially young women, are socialized by parents and taught by teachers at school to become FIPs, so that they can be financially responsible FIPs as adults and not expect to be able to parasite off the money and labor of a man. Masculist theorists are very conscious that the creation of a FIP society would solve most of men's gender problems. For example, the divorce laws could be much more easily made men-fair, because nearly all women would be FIPs, so alimony could be thrown out, custody of children could be made joint by default, so no child payments to women. The para could be brought in much more easily because nearly all women would be FIPs and could afford the full cost of the kid if she chose to continue with a pregnancy that the father has the right to reject if he wants, in the same way that women have a mara, having the right to reject an unwanted pregnancy on her part, but not on his. So you can see why the idea that women are capable of being FIPs is critical to the Masculists. So much of their political program rests on this basic assumption. So when I hear TFM claiming that FIP females don't exist, that sends off alarm bells in my brain. It's critically important that he is wrong from the Masculist point of view, so I felt motivated to refute him, hence this flyer. I think the empirical evidence is strong that women are capable of becoming FIPs, and in a major way. Of course, Masculist pressure will increase mightily on young women to FIP up, or they'll be punished by young men for being hated fluffies and hence not getting a man. As the media latches onto the fact that advanced economies are wiping themselves out, having low birth rates, for example, South Korea, one of the lowest in the world, has a birth rate less than 1.2 children per woman and falling, then the media will get into the act of reporting on the greatest story of the century, that is, that humanity will go extinct unless young women and young men can be persuaded to have more kids. This issue can only increase and increase. So, once the media is on the Masculist side, pushing for women to FIP up and to vote with men to men-fair the gender laws, so that men are more prepared to be fathers again. Many young men would like to have kids, but don't dare to in today's fluffy feminist hypocrite-dominated divorce court system, which so financially massacres one married father in 4, ruining his life. So not surprisingly, young men choose to go MGTOW as a result, refusing to marry, refusing to have kids, and spending their money on themselves, because they don't want to be parasited upon by a bloody fluffy. So summarising, women can be FIPs and must be FIPs, even if their general performance level is a bit below men's, particularly at the top end of the performance scale. Women have a moral obligation to be emo FIPs, that is, equal moral obligations FIPs. That is, they are expected by the Masculists and by society as a whole to feel morally obliged to be FIPs, that is, to be morally responsible adult females, pulling their own financial weight and not expecting to parasite off the labour and money of a man. Such women deserve their treatment by Masculists, being seen for what they are, that is, immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, to be wiped out. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and De Garis Essays. Ciao.